Entitled mother tries to steal my laptop so her kid could play Fortnite. This happened before quarantine, but that doesn't really matter as much to the story. So I was studying in the library and waiting for my parents to pick me up when entitled mother and entitled kid approached me. The conversation then starts like this. "Excuse me, young man, the library's computer couldn't work, so can entitled kid please play Fortnite on your laptop?" Mind you, I'd be lucky if my computer could run a standard browser game. I say sorry, but I'm doing my assignments now, so I need my computer. Entitled mother chuckles. "Oh, I know you are not studying. You better share it with entitled kid or I'll talk to your parents." "Sorry, but I really can't." "Look, your kid can play it on the library's computer using my card. You want me to just register it for you? Just be sure to sign out after 1 hour." "But can it play Fortnite?" "Probably not. I'm pretty sure you'll need to register and download all those things." "Please let him play. It'll be just a few minutes." "Sorry, I really can't." Entitled kid then tries to grab my laptop, but is avoided by me. Entitled mother storms away. A few minutes later, they came back with a library staff and comes back to me. The library staff says, "Hey buddy, I need you to give back entitled kid his laptop." Pardon me? Look, you can't just grab people's laptops without asking, especially someone this small like entitled kid. "I'm pretty sure that it's mine. I have all my Gmail and stuff." "May I see it?" Proceeds to show library staff my work. Entitled mother, "Are you sure it's entitled kid's?" "Actually, I let entitled kid play on my work laptop." "Do you, by any chance, have an assignment on animal population genetics?" "Yes, I'm actually a science teacher and I'm marking my students' projects." At this point, I was devastated that entitled mother would go this far to get some kid's laptop. I say, "Is it possible for you to check the security cams? I'm pretty sure you guys have those installed." The library staff says, "Okay, just wait here." Entitled mother then proceeds to dash out of the library at a speed that even Usain Bolt would be jealous of. Library staff comes back to me to apologize for what happened, but it was all good in the end. How little of a soul this Karen must have had to be able to lie like that to the library staff in his face right in front of OP. Have you ever had somebody try to steal something from you and lie about it so candidly like this before? Let me know in the comments down below. I've had some run-ins before, but usually it's just over some kind of cheapo thing when I was a kid, not a fully grown person. Our next story is by Octorboss, entitled Mother Forced Me to Do Her Kids' Homework. I'd like to think that I'm fairly good in school. I maintain good grades and all the teachers find me polite and respectful. Obviously, in any school, there will be students who are not as adept as others and can struggle. There's also parents who are full of themselves just because they drive posh cars and stay in luxurious houses. I was in the library doing my homework one day when one of my classmates and his mother walked in. They kept eyeballing me and looking at me. I got extremely uncomfortable and decided to leave, thinking that I was better off doing my homework at home. As I was getting up, she beckons me to come towards her, and not wanting to cause any commotion, I comply. She then asks me a lot of personal questions. Her son and I aren't the best of friends and they don't know much about me, like for how much time I study in a day, where I stay, what my parents do, etc. Naturally, I was a bit taken aback and gave vague, ambiguous answers. The mother realized what I was doing and said there was nothing to be uncomfortable about. I then made up a story about needing to go somewhere and wanted to leave the library as soon as I could. She then sees that I was doing the homework assigned to the class and asks me whether I found this difficult. It was basic algebra and coordinate geometry, so I said yes. She then says that her son was struggling with the homework and needed some help, so I sat down and decided to explain it to her. As I began explaining him the method and the steps to solve the sum, she has the audacity to tell me that my accent is really heavy and that nobody could understand what I was saying. I was extremely offended, but decided to keep my mouth shut. She tells me to do the sums for him instead, as everyone deserves an equal learning opportunity. I was pissed off and decided to play along. I casually went about doing the sums and solving them. I then realized something. If I write the sums incorrectly, they would be none the wiser. So from there on, I put incorrect answers to each sum on the paper. I laced in a few correct ones just to make sure it didn't seem too sketchy. I then went home, smiling at what I had done. The next day, we had math in the first block. I saw the smug look of the boy bragging to his so-called friends how he had become really good at math and how he had no problem doing these sums. I smiled to myself, knowing exactly what was going to happen. The teacher then asked us to discuss the homework, and he raised his hand, saying how he knew all the answers. He then narrated his sheet, and the teacher looked at him doubtfully, saying that he needed a bit of work. I then raised my hand and narrated my answers, each of them correct. The look the boy gave me was amazing, and to this day I remember his eyes looking at me with disgust. I began to laugh. I felt cool, like Batman. Only I knew what I had done. Yeah, how dare this entitled mother prey on innocent children to try and coerce them into giving their son all the answers? I'm proud of little OP, and I'm proud that little OP was proud of little OP too. This next story is by Wannabe Bog God, entitled Aunt Claims We Have a Poltergeist, rather than admit that her kid destroyed my things. This happened a few years ago now, so though I do remember the sequence of events, conversations are a bit fuzzy. Also, kind of a longish story, so the story requires some background. My aunt, the entitled aunt in question, who I'll just refer to as K, has 3 sons, who are 1, 5, and 8. C at the time of the story. The younger 2 don't play much of a part in this story. K is and always was emotionally abusive and willingly sat by and watched as her husband, D for Richard, was physically abusive to her and her children. Over the course of about 15 years or so, she was on and off with Richard and always said she was going to leave him, but never did, and always went back in the end. Almost every single time she left, she always came crawling back to my mother and father seeking salvation, and they always begrudgingly welcomed her back. When this story takes place, Kay had once again left Richard, promising that she was leaving for the final time, and my family took her and her boys in. Things were off to a bad start immediately, and there were multiple events leading up to the poltergeist fiasco. The first event was when I went into the restroom and saw that an expensive lipstick of mine was smeared over the mirror and sink, and the actual tube was destroyed. I am by no means a beauty guru or anything like that. However, I think I'm pretty decent at makeup and have a small collection. I tend to buy pretty cheap products, but I have a few choice things that are relatively pricey and all of which have been gifts. The lipstick in question was about $50 and had been a gift from a deceased friend and honestly a bit sentimental. I completely understand that kids will be kids and stuff like this is bound to happen. So I think when stuff like this happens, what you should do is sit down your kid and tell them that stuff like this isn't okay, right? Well, no, apparently not. Prior to this, Kay had always had the "my child can do no wrong" mentality. So I was already expecting her to avoid blame or to not do anything, but I thought I should address it anyway. I went and told her that one of her kids had destroyed an expensive lipstick of mine, and that, though I know kids will be kids, I'd appreciate it if she had a word with them about not touching my things. Immediately, she was adamant that her children would never do something like that, and that it must have been our great-grandmother N, who lives 3 stories down and can't climb stairs. Later I learned that she went and cried to my grandmother, G, who is also extremely entitled, claiming that I hate her and her children and that I like to blame them for everything. Her boys had been prone to destroying and stealing things in the past and had been caught red-handed multiple times. This annoyed the ever-loving poop out of me, to say the least. So I asked my mom to talk to her, and I let it slide. About a week later, my oldest cousin C went upstairs to use the restroom, and was in there for a remarkable amount of time. I went up about 5 minutes after he'd left and found the exact same lipstick smeared everywhere again, some brushes literally chopped to pieces, and a limited edition palette ripped apart and scattered everywhere. Should note that at this point, I hadn't actually found the tube of lipstick this time, and I assumed he'd taken it or thrown it away. Another week or so later, I found it shoved into a bag of pads with an expensive lipstick-covered watch. I went and got Kay to show her the scene, and she was once again positive that it couldn't have been her son, even though he'd locked himself in there for almost an hour. She then got upset and said that I blamed everything on our kids, etc., and that it was probably N before going and crying in her room. Literally left all 3 children alone downstairs and expected us to watch them. I went directly to my mom because I was honestly pissed, and I asked her to deal with it before I blew up at Kay. She said she would, and she had a talk with Kay about disciplining her sons later that night. The next day is when it starts to get fun. I went into the kitchen to find Kay standing there looking dejected and visibly drunk. She sighed and said, "I'm sorry about your makeup, but it honestly wasn't C." She then went on about how he hadn't left her side all that day, which everyone knew was false, and then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I think we have a poltergeist, and I think it's targeting C for some reason." She went on for 10 minutes talking about every single thing he or his brothers had done, insisting that it had never been them all along, and it had always been this ghost. I was absolutely floored. Whether ghosts are real or not, whatever. But I can darn assure you that if we had a poltergeist, I would have known about it. Honestly, I wasn't looking for a fight this day, and I just rolled my eyes and went back upstairs. Later, G came to me furious, saying that I was being absolutely horrible to Kay and that I'd made her cry. I got upset at this point and said that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me because she's too darn stupid and entitled to admit her son had destroyed my things. Kay heard this from upstairs and called my mother to say that I was treating her horribly and that her son hadn't even done anything wrong. Unfortunately, this sequence of events only persisted for about a month and only continued to get worse. While all of this was playing out, Kay and the kids were making everyone's lives living heck in multiple ways, and completely overtook and destroyed our house, even though she was no more than a guest. The final straw in this scenario was when I had found 2 lipsticks and a very sentimental necklace absolutely destroyed and torn apart after C had spent another hour in there. I lost my freaking mind and went immediately to Kay and called her out for C's constant behavior, and that if she didn't put a stop to it, I would lose my absolute crap with her. For about an hour or 2, she paced around the house exclaiming about how we were all horrible and mistreating her, and blaming everything on her kids when it couldn't possibly have been them, and how it's a poltergeist and that we were all just skeptics, even though the supposed poltergeist has been terrorizing them for years. I just had to sit through all of this because she wouldn't let me speak. Then she legitimately called an exorcist. She exclaimed to him that we were being terrorized by a poltergeist and that it's targeting her child and that now she's probably going to be kicked out and put on the street over some goddarn lipstick that her son didn't even destroy, and so much more. This whole situation just blew my freaking mind. And I just sat there and listened and watched as she victimized herself and completely crab-talked me and my family to this exorcist. Eventually, my mother stepped in and put a stop to the madness, and I don't know exactly what happened after that. I know that my mom went off on her at the very least. Over the next few days, Kay completely ignored us and wouldn't even address what happened. Before one day when she stopped me on the way out of the house and mumbled a sort of snarky apology. In the end, my makeup never got replaced and I never really got a substantial apology. But I was less upset about the monetary value and overall, just the principle of things. Kay and the kids moved out about 2 months later because Richard got out of prison. She moved back in later that year after leaving Richard again, and then last year moved out to get back with Richard again. Since then, Kay pretty much destroyed her relationships with everyone, and we've since cut contact, and she is never welcome back in our lives. I will finish this off by saying that I love my cousins dearly, and if I get so much as a hint that they're still being abused, I will go through heck and back to get them out of there. As far as I can tell, the abuse, physical and emotional, has stopped, but I plan to get social services involved the second I hear if something goes wrong. I don't blame my cousins for anything, and at the end of the day, they're still just kids with crappy freaking parents. And honestly, they're good kids, and I wish I could have been there for them more. I have a myriad of entitled parent stories revolving around my aunt besides this one, and maybe I'll tell them in the future as well. Now, I've heard a lot of entitled parent claims. Poltergeists? I think that's a new one for me. I think the whole Richard thing is a whole other case. I don't even want to try and go into the whole mental thing about it and the fact that people keep going back to kinds of partners like that repeatedly regardless. It's just mind-blowing that they would resort to poltergeists rather than being able to just accept that your kid can destroy things sometimes. And it's not even like OP would hold a grudge against them. They're just kids. They just want their parents to be able to be responsible for them, right? And our final story of the day is by Jinx800. Karen gets mad and accuses my baby of being gay. So I have read a lot of stories in here and never really experienced anything close to what I would read about in this sub. But then I had a kid and apparently became a Karen magnet. The story is me and a wild Karen in a baby lounge / baby / breastfeeding area. So I'm changing my DS 5 months and he has a huge poo-splosion all the way up his back. Sigh. So I grabbed what I had in my diaper bag, and it was a pink bodysuit with only pink socks left. We thought we were having a girl at first and got surprised by a boy, so I saved most of it, but items like socks and a few neutral pink onesies I used for him. He is in his pink bodysuit and socks. He is feeding and having a great time when a woman approaches. She had been breastfeeding from across from me. "Such a cute baby, what's the name?" I say it's Jonathan. Karen's shocked Pikachu face. "You really shouldn't put pink on a boy." Me, confused, says, "Why? He doesn't mind at this age." "I know things are more alternative here in this country, but stuff like that will turn your kid gay." "I don't care if he's gay." Karen gets out a black onesie from her bag. "Here, you can put this on him." "Didn't you hear me? I don't care." At this point, my boy is upset, so I pack our stuff and leave. Karen, as we leave, "Freak off then, you and your homo son." I was just gobsmacked. What in the world goes through a person's head to think it's okay? So this was my day. Just needed to vent. I always never really understood that stigma. Why can't guys wear pink? What's wrong with wearing pink? And alternatively, yeah, what's wrong with being gay? It's not like you're going to have to grow up with them and sleep with them. What's wrong with wanting to love who you love? I just don't understand, you know?